I never expected to inherit anything from Grandma Rose. Not the mansion in Beverly Hills like my cousin Rebecca got, or the vacation house in Aspen that went to Michael, or the stock portfolio that made Thomas jump for joy. No, I got the worthless old farm in Montana where Grandma grew up. The one property the family had written off as sentimental junk. Emma, darling, Aunt Patricia's voice dripped with false sympathy at the will reading. At least you got something. Though I can't imagine what you'll do with that run-down place. I sat in the lawyer's plush office, surrounded by my wealthy relatives, clutching the deed to 200 acres of what they considered worthless land. The same land where I'd spent every summer until I was 12. Helping Grandma Rose tend her garden and listening to her stories under the big oak tree. Maybe you can sell it, Cousin Rebecca suggested, not looking up from admiring her new house keys. I'm sure some developer would give you something for it. Enough for a decent car, at least. My mother squeezed my hand, the only other person who seemed to understand. She'd grown up on that farm before marrying my father and moving to the city. Before Grandma Rose made her fortune in real estate and transformed herself into one of Beverly Hills' most elegant socialites. The farm was where it all began, though most of the family preferred to forget those humble origins. Actually, I said, standing up, I think I'll keep it. The room fell silent. Even Mr. Harrison, the family lawyer, looked up from his papers with surprise. But darling, Aunt Patricia sputtered, what could you possibly do with a farm? You're a graphic designer in Seattle. I was a graphic designer who had just lost my job in the tech industry downsizing, but they didn't need to know that. I'm going to live there. Live there? Rebecca's laugh could have cut glass. In that old barn with the chickens? Emma, Uncle Robert chimed in, trying to sound reasonable, be sensible. That place hasn't been properly maintained in years. The house probably isn't even habitable. They were probably right. I hadn't been to the farm since I was 12, when Grandma Rose decided summers were better spent at cotillion classes and charity galas. But something in my gut told me this wasn't a mistake. Grandma Rose never did anything without a reason. 2 weeks later, I pulled up to the farm in my packed Honda Civic, wondering if I'd lost my mind. The old mailbox still read Weeheleer Farm in faded letters, Grandma's maiden name. The gravel driveway was overgrown, and the white farmhouse needed a fresh coat of paint, but it was still standing proud against the Montana sky. And there was the barn, its red paint weathered but intact, just as I remembered it. Well, I said to myself, pulling out my house keys, home sweet home. The house was musty but surprisingly well maintained. Grandma must have kept someone local checking on it. The furniture was covered in sheets, like sleeping ghosts of my childhood memories. Everything was exactly as I remembered, down to the old grandfather clock in the hallway still ticking away the hours. I spent that first day uncovering furniture and opening windows, letting in fresh air and sunlight. Each room held memories. The kitchen where Grandma taught me to bake pies, the living room where she'd tell stories of her early days in Montana, the creaky stairs I used to slide down despite everyone's warnings. But it was the barn that called to me. I'd always loved the barn. It was my secret place during those childhood summers where I'd hide with books and dreams while the adults discussed business in the house. Grandma would find me there sometimes, bringing cookies and more stories. This barn holds secrets, she used to say with a wink. Some buildings do, you know. They keep things safe until the right person comes along to find them. I didn't understand what she meant then. I was about to. The barn door creaked open just as the sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The interior was shadowy, filled with old farm equipment and hay bales. The air smelled of dust and aged wood. Something caught my eye, a glint of metal in the fading light. Moving closer, I realized it was an old trunk, half hidden behind some crates. I'd never noticed it during my childhood explorations. The lock was old but well oiled, as if someone had maintained it. And there, hanging on a nail nearby, was a key. Inside the trunk, I found leather-bound journals, dozens of them, all in Grandma Rose's elegant handwriting. The first one was dated 1962, the year she turned 18. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dearest Emma, yes, my love, I'm writing this to you, though you won't be born for many years yet. I know you'll be the one to find these journals because you're the only one who truly understood what this farm means. Your cousins see only dirt and chickens. They measure worth in square footage and stock portfolios. But you, my darling girl, you see what I saw. The magic in growing things, the value in honest work, the wealth that can't be measured in dollars. What I'm about to tell you will change everything. The truth about our family's fortune, about this farm, and about why I chose you to inherit it. You see, this isn't just a farm. It's the key to something much bigger. My heart pounding, I read on. Each word felt like a revelation. A secret kept safe in this barn for decades, waiting for the right person, waiting for me. By the time I finished the first journal, night had fallen. Through the barn door, I could see lights in the farmhouse windows, making it glow like a beacon in the darkness. But I hardly noticed. My mind was racing with what I just learned. The family thought they knew how Grandma Rose made her fortune. Smart real estate investments in the 1970s, turning her into one of Beverly Hills' wealthiest women. They thought they knew why she kept this old farm. Mere sentimentality. They were wrong. So wonderfully, incredibly wrong. I looked around the barn with new eyes, understanding now why Grandma Rose had given me this inheritance. It wasn't just land and buildings. It was a mystery, a legacy, and an opportunity that would shake my family to its core. My phone buzzed. Cousin Rebecca. Have you come to your senses yet? I know a developer who might be interested. I smiled, thinking of the journals and what they revealed. No thanks, I texted back. I think I'll stick with the chickens. Part 2. Seeds of Fortune. I spent the next week reading Grandma Rose's journals, each one revealing another piece of an incredible story. The truth about our family's wealth wasn't in real estate deals or stock market gambles. It was literally growing in the soil beneath my feet. The farm, it turned out, was home to something extraordinary. In 1962, my grandmother discovered that certain herbs on her land had unique properties. Not just medicinal properties, though those were remarkable enough, but characteristics that made them invaluable to pharmaceutical research. Properties that, according to her meticulous notes, couldn't be replicated anywhere else in the world. The soil here is special, she'd written. Something in its composition, combined with the specific altitude and climate, creates conditions that can't be duplicated. I tested samples everywhere from Switzerland to South America. Nothing matches what grows here. She partnered with a small pharmaceutical company, licensing the herbs for research while maintaining complete control of the land and growing conditions. That company, now one of the largest in the world, still paid millions in licensing fees every year. Fees that went into a separate account from the real estate empire she'd built as a cover. But there was more. The real wealth isn't in what's growing now, one entry read. It's in what we haven't discovered yet. Every season brings new variations, new possibilities. The right person could spend a lifetime studying these plants and barely scratch the surface of their potential. My hands shook as I read the latest licensing agreement tucked into the most recent journal. The pharmaceutical company was desperate to buy the land outright. They offered billions. Grandma had refused. Only a Wheeler can tend this land properly, she'd written. It takes more than science. It takes love, intuition, and the ability to see magic in ordinary things. That's why I chose you, Emma. You have the sight, just like I did. I remembered those childhood summers suddenly in a new light. How Grandma Rose would teach me about different herbs, showing me how to tell them apart by smell and texture. How she'd explain that every plant had a story to tell, if you knew how to listen. I thought she was just being whimsical. Now I understood. She'd been training me. The next morning, I called Dr. Sarah Chen, the contact name listed in the latest journal. Miss Wheeler, she answered on the first ring. We've been hoping to hear from you. Your grandmother spoke highly of you. You knew about me. Rose was very clear about her succession plan. We've maintained the basic operations since her passing, but the land needs a Wheeler's touch. The yields aren't what they used to be. I looked out at the fields through my kitchen window. To anyone else, they would look like ordinary herb gardens gone slightly wild. To me, they now look like one of the most valuable pharmaceutical resources in the world. I'll need time, I said, to learn everything properly. Of course, Rose left detailed instructions for your training, and the current contract remains in effect, so you'll have plenty of funding to restore the farm. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind spinning. The same relatives who'd mocked my worthless inheritance had no idea they were living off its profits. Every luxury car, every vacation home, every designer outfit had been paid for by these humble herbs. My phone buzzed, another text from Rebecca. There's a family dinner next week at my new house. You should come, if you can leave your chickens long enough. I smiled. Actually, I'd love to. I have some interesting news to share. The week flew by in a blur of activity. Dr. Chen sent over research teams to help me catalog the current crops. Local workers who'd maintained the farm for years shared their knowledge of the land. Every day brought new discoveries, new understanding of what Grandma Rose had built. The night of the family dinner, I drove my dusty Honda Civic up Rebecca's perfectly manicured driveway. Through the windows of her massive new mansion, I could see the family gathered in all their designer glory. Emma, Aunt Patricia's voice carried across the marble foyer. We didn't think you'd come. How's farm life? The way she said farm life made it sound like a terminal illness. Fascinating, actually, I replied, accepting a glass of champagne. I've been learning so much about what Grandma Rose built there. Built? Uncle Robert scoffed. It's just an old family farm. The real wealth came from her real estate investments. I took a sip of champagne. Did you ever wonder where she got the money for those first investments? The room quieted. Even Rebecca looked up from her phone. What do you mean? My mother asked softly. She'd been unusually quiet since the will reading, as if she'd suspected something all along. I pulled out one of Grandma's journals, the one from 1970, documenting her first pharmaceutical contract. Maybe we should all sit down. This is quite a story. Over the next hour, I watched their expressions change from dismissal to disbelief to shock as I explained the truth about our family's fortune. The herbs, the research, the ongoing contracts worth millions each year. But that's impossible, Aunt Patricia sputtered. It's just a farm. A farm, I agreed, that 3 major pharmaceutical companies have tried to buy for billions. The same farm that's been funding this family's lifestyle for 50 years. Why didn't you tell us? Rebecca demanded. Because my mother said suddenly she knew what you'd do with that information. You try to sell it, develop it, destroy everything she built for a quick profit. I nodded. The land only works because it's been preserved, tended with care and understanding. That's what she was protecting. And she left it to you, Thomas said slowly, because you actually cared about the farm itself, not just its value. What happens now? Uncle Robert asked, his voice uncharacteristically humble. I thought about the fields waiting for me back home, the mystery still hidden in Grandma Rose's journals, the legacy she trusted me to continue. Now I do what Grandma did. I tend the land, protect its secrets, and make sure this family's true wealth isn't just measured in dollars. The drive home that night felt different. The stars seemed brighter over the farm, and the old barn stood like a guardian of secrets in the darkness. I left my stunned relatives to digest their new understanding of our family's fortune, but I knew the real wealth wasn't in the licensing fees or potential sales value. The real wealth was in the wisdom Grandma Rose had left behind. In her journals, I found not just scientific observations, but life lessons. She wrote about patience, about listening to the land, about understanding that the most valuable things often look ordinary to those who don't know how to see. Over the next year, the farm transformed, not into something new, but back to what it had always been. The herbs flourished under proper care. The research yielded exciting new discoveries. The old farmhouse came alive again with visiting scientists and family members who finally understood its true value. Rebecca started bringing her children to visit, letting them play in the same fields where I'd spent my summers. Aunt Patricia learned to tell different herbs apart, developing a genuine interest in their properties. Even Uncle Robert helped restore the barn, admitting that some investments can't be measured in quarterly returns. My mother spent more time at the farm too, sharing stories of her own childhood here that she kept quiet for years. Mom always said you had her gift, she told me one evening as we watched the sunset from the porch. The ability to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. The pharmaceutical company's latest offer sits unopened on my desk. They've probably added another 0 to the figure, but it doesn't matter. This land is worth more than money can measure. Last week, I found a new variety of herb growing near the old oak tree. According to Dr. Chen's preliminary tests, it could revolutionize the treatment of several autoimmune diseases. But that's not what makes it special. What makes it special is that I found it exactly where Grandma Rose predicted I would, in a journal entry written 30 years ago. When the right person tends this land with love and understanding, new gifts reveal themselves. That's the real magic, my darling Emma. Not in what we already know, but in what we're ready to discover. The family still gathers for dinners, but now they happen here at the farm. The children run through the herb gardens while the adults sip wine on the porch, sharing stories and plans for the future. There's a different kind of wealth in these gatherings now, not the cold glitter of competition and status, but the warm glow of shared understanding and purpose. Sometimes, in the quiet of evening, I sit in the barn with Grandma Rose's journals, adding my own observations alongside hers. The trunk that held her secrets now holds mine too. New discoveries, new possibilities, new stories to be passed down. Some buildings keep things safe, she wrote, until the right person comes along to find them. She was right, as she always was. This farm wasn't a consolation prize or a worthless piece of land. It was the heart of everything, our family's true legacy, waiting for someone who could see its real value. As for me, I finally found my place. Not in a high-rise office or a Beverly Hills mansion, but here among the herbs and healing plants, continuing the work of a remarkable woman who knew that true wealth grows from the ground up. The deed to the farm hangs framed in my office now, next to a photo of Grandma Rose in her garden. She's smiling that knowing smile of hers, surrounded by her precious herbs, looking exactly like what she was. Not just a wealthy socialite, but a keeper of secrets, a tender of magic, a woman who understood that the most valuable legacies aren't the ones you can sell, but the ones you choose to protect and nurture. The right person, she wrote in her final journal entry, doesn't ask what something is worth. They ask what it means. I know what she meant now, and every morning, as I walk through my fields under the Montana sky, I give thanks for this inheritance, not of money or status, but of purpose, understanding, and the chance to be part of something truly extraordinary. That's a wealth beyond measure.